So hello everyone and welcome to CiC's monthly webinar for July 2023. And today's topic is practicing self-care. And I think it's an important topic that I think most of us will do some form of this on a daily or regular basis. And we might even start today with just thinking about recognizing those things that we do that support our self-care. I've got a couple of tools and tactics to share with you around making space for this kind of thing, around understanding what our individual needs are. But as always, I'm going to be reaching out to you as the audience to hear your point of view on this, because it's more important than just what comes out of my one brain and the research that I do. So please do engage with the session using the chat. I can see lots of you introducing yourselves already, which is fantastic. Jump in the chat, tell us who you are, where you're dialing in from, and what you find important about this topic. As always, you can send your messages to me in the chat as a private message by selecting my name from the drop-down list where it says to everyone. Just select Harry Key and send me a message. So I'm Harry, I work for CiC, I'm the head of Global Specialist Services, so I run all of our programs that sit slightly outside of the regular EAP work, lots of global trauma support, training, peer support programs and things like that. As a clinician myself, I find myself very often engaging with my clients and patients around what is self-care for them. And I've tried to put this together with a bit of a theme for this month because, well, you'll find out shortly as we get into the slides. We've got Kate there in the chat from Imperial College, interested in thinking about helping teaching staff and students to practice self-care. Brilliant. So you're already here with a view about others, but make sure you take an opportunity during this session to check in on your own self-care, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Corinne says, hi, I'm Corinne from the International Student Advisory Team at Reading. Wonderful to have you here, Corinne. Thank you. Keep introducing yourselves, keep giving me your point of view. I was researching the topic of self-care, and this little comic came up, and I felt like it kind of jogged my thinking process quite well. My lifestyle has become more sedentary. I don't see myself as being a less active person or less energetic all of a sudden, but over the last few years, I've spent more and more time sitting in this chair than doing anything else, really. Very often I can get up in the morning, sit down at this chair, and not really think of myself or my needs for hours and hours on end until suddenly, usually I get hungry or I need the bathroom or something, and it jogs it to me. And I thought that this was a nice way of displaying that yeah, so our lifestyles have changed. No doubt, dozens of you here today, how many have we got? About 73 people so far. Dozens of you will be sitting at home listening, working from home. We don't walk very far to get from our bed to our home office. So we need to inject sometimes a little bit of purposeful self-care into our day. And why are we looking at this in July? Well, the 24th of July is International Self-Care Day. The idea being the date 24/7, 24th of July, reflects the benefits of the self-care that we do. It's something that's felt 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every little bit of time you put into self-care is like an investment. We're taking that investment back all the time, bodily, mentally, socially, physically, in all sorts of different capacities that we have during our working lives and our personal lives as well. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat as we talk about this initial slide. How do you define self-care? Either what does it mean to you, or what do you think, what aspects do you think are really important of it? This year in 2023, I really enjoyed this title, this theme for International Self-Care Day 2023 was resilience, adaptability, and thriving in adversity. And when I first read that, I thought, yes, gosh, we must think about all of the people who are adversely affected around the world at the moment, all the people who are in really difficult situations. And then as I started to think about it a little more, actually I started to come around to the thought that, well, we're all in adversity. We're all requiring resilience and adaptability, especially over the last few years with the pandemic and the changes that that brought into our working and personal lives. We are all working through this. We have cost of living crises across the world. We have mental health pandemics. Here in the UK, our National Health Service is turned 75 this year and is not coping so well with some of the stresses and strains that are put on it. So as life, I've put here, becomes more complex, faster paced, and this is crucial, more connected to others, the more connected to other people we become. Meta, Facebook released their new social media platform, Threads, over the last day or so. Immediately, millions and millions, tens of millions of people signing up to connect to other people and hear from them. But what about hearing from myself? The more connected I am to others, the more I need to make a dedicated effort to find time for myself and my own self-care. So I've got a few people responding here in the chat, so I'm gonna make sure that I get to as many as possible. We've got Daniel here from Imperial, trained as a mental health first aider, but also dealing with teenagers in my family and long-term complex mental health issues. Spend a lot of time dealing with psychiatric hospitals. Good to have you here, Daniel. Thank you. Angela, also at Reading. Nice to see you all. I think I've not really engaged much with this idea of self-care, thinking it was a bit hippie and about breathing and meditation, but I'm starting to realize it's actually about looking after myself. Yeah, it's a really good point there, Angela. I'm glad to have you here. And yeah, it's easy to be skeptical about these ideas, but it's also easy to forget the things we do every day that care for ourselves. And I think sometimes if we don't mark those, respect them, they slip when we're under pressure more easily. And we don't get the additional benefit of feeling like I'm actively doing something to care for myself. I've got Phil here from Marshall's construction firm. I'm a mental health first aider who regularly has conversations with colleagues who are challenged by a busy lifestyle we all lead. Yeah, it comes to that last bullet point there, this busy lifestyle. I want to hear more about that as we go through. Kareem's defined it here. Self-care to me is taking time out of the day to check in with yourself and do what you feel your body, mind, or spirit needs. Fantastic. And we're going to give a little bit of an example of that checking in process later. Saha here from Historic Royal Palaces at Hampton Court. Lovely to see you. Fiona says, self-care for me is taking time to listen to my body and brain. Great. Listening to yourself and being aware of the things that I like doing that are restorative and then doing them. Karen says self-care is taking time to slow down, listen to what my body is asking for, and knowing what it needs to act on that. That's a really crucial point. Easier said than done. Yeah. Julie from Suffolk, radiographer working in the NHS and a mental health first aider. So not only is your job about really supporting the health of others, you've gone above that and volunteered to be a mental health first aider. That's wonderful. Katie says self-care for me is about ensuring you're aware of your own needs as well as how your actions impact on others you connect with, as this can rebound back on you. What a beautiful addition to the concept. Thank you, Katie. Annabelle says taking time to look after yourself, rest and relaxation, R&R, yeah, really important. Julie says, I subscribe to the idea of self-care, but some things can become a to-do and more stress, but getting better. Brilliant. Thank you all for sharing those. I really, really appreciate it. The more of this input, the more of your knowledge that we add into here, the more we'll all get out of the session, I hope, and also the more that those listening back on the recording will get to hear from, rather than just me as well. So the International Self-Care Foundation defines these 7 pillars of self-care. I want to hear from you in the chat. What strikes you as the most important pillar here? Hopefully, we're doing a bit of the first pillar here today, knowledge and health literacy. The more knowledgeable I am, the more literate I am about my own personal, mental, and physical and spiritual health, the more able I am to care for it. And that includes mental well-being, physical activity, and what we put into our body, healthy eating, or the opposite of healthy eating, taking risks, using or misusing substances like alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, things like that. So risk avoidance and mitigation is in there. Good hygiene. The difference you feel on a day working from home where you've taken time in the morning to wash yourself, clean your teeth properly, make sure that you are physically self-caring. It makes a huge, huge difference to my day personally. And then responsible use of self-care products and services. Again, in this interconnected, fast-paced modern world, there are loads of resources, services, and products out there designed or attempting to get us engaged in our own self-care. How do we use them? What are they and what works well? Let's hear from all of you in the chat there. Paul from Imperial says many researchers feel guilt when stepping away from research, failing to recognize the benefits. Yeah. And I think we can expand that out, Paul, to many of the roles that people have mentioned here. If I'm stepping away from my role that I chose because I feel like it gives me some sort of benefit, some sort of importance in the world. It feels good to do my job to support people across the globe with their mental health. But when I step away from that to do something to look after myself, it has to come with the recognition that the better I'm looked after, the better I can look after and support others as well. And that goes for the research roles that you mentioned there, I think, really well. Kath says, to me, self-care is trying to give yourself what you need, which isn't necessarily always the same and what you want, and it isn't always as easy, e.g. choosing to go for a walk and take some time in nature instead of scrolling on my phone. Yeah. But Ian dialing in from Warchild UK. Hi, Ian. Philip says they all work together and are dependent on each other. Wonderful. Yeah, these pillars. And that's why I like the picture of that old, I don't know, I'm going to say Greek or Roman. I'm not very good with architecture, but yeah, if you take down one of those pillars, the others are put under more strain or perhaps fail and the whole building falls. Beck says, I feel that mental well-being is the main pillar. I'm going to agree with you there as a therapist, of course. But if you can work on that, I think it's easier for the others to take place. Yeah, our mind is probably the most important thing to look after from exactly that aspect. I might have real key acute physical well-being needs. However, if my mental health is impacted and I don't feel I deserve to look after them, or if I don't feel I get any specific benefit from it, why would I carry on? Why would I do anything to look after myself if I don't feel like I deserve that looking after? Brilliant. Yeah. Ian said here, yeah, good hygiene to start with. It should be the first thing we do in the day is care for and look after the physical body we're in. Ava says here, mental well-being is crucial. Hi, Becky. Fiona says 2, 3, and 4 on this list are foundations for me. So that's mental well-being, physical activity, and healthy eating. Yeah, I think those three have a good synergy with each other as well, Fiona. Karen says, I also think mental well-being is the most important, otherwise it's hard to do others. Yeah. Annabelle says, I can't pick the most important pillar. Mental well-being, physical activity, and healthy eating are equally important. Great. Claire says they're all interconnected, but physical activity and healthy eating both have a positive impact on mental well-being. Can you see what's starting to happen here? There is no right or wrong answer here, but what we're starting to do is we're thinking about which bits are most important for us. Where are our needs the most apparent to ourselves? This is where I'm going to throw it back to all of you. That those of you that have answered this either in the chat or just on your own listening in your head, here are the parts you need to focus on. And look, Victoria's put a really good point here. I'm reading the list and I know I'm not doing enough on any of them. Okay, that's a really good position to start with. So, which one feels easiest? Which one feels like you can make some time for it today? The sooner we start with generating a habit of good self-care, the more likely it is to embed and be something that you're going to do long term. Daniel says, in a plane, you're required to put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. Self-care is similar. You need to be well to offer real support to those struggling. Yeah, really good. So, what impacts our ability to self-care? We started to look at what these pillars are. I think most of us could point out one or two on that list at least that we could perhaps spend a little bit more time, effort, and energy on. What's stopping us? What is stopping us from being a perfectly self-caring individual that looks after ourselves in such a fantastic way that we can become a superhero and go off and do all sorts of wonderful things for others too? I've asked the question here in green. What do you think gets in the way of your self-care? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the chat. I've put a few here just to get us started. Physical health. I think my physical health, okay, I think the consensus already from the chat is time. People shouting that out immediately. Good. We've got some focus slides here to start thinking about what time it is we need for self-care. So I've put here physical health. If my physical health is impacted, what happens? Well, what happens often is it leads to a very specific focus on that physical health need, and I can often forget others. We do generally live in cultures that respect and understand physical health still more than they do mental health. So it might be easier for me to get support if I'm talking about a physical health issue. Mental health, making space, time for self-care needs. It takes mental capacity. If my mental health is impacted, I've got less of a capacity to find that space and focus. Busyness, as all of you shouting out time in the chat, yeah, there will probably agree with, feeling overwhelmed and not able to switch off. And this is such a large component of how I see the impacts on self-care these days. It is incredible how fast our technology is moving and how connecting it can be for us. I think it's also impacted workplaces. I think more of us are having more responsibility put on us when it comes to the workplace in terms of staying on top of things, being responsible ultimately for answering questions, reading messages, communicating with dozens and dozens of people, sometimes all over the globe. Relationships. And I put here an example, if I'm caring for others, do I also make space for myself? But sometimes we can have relationships that impact our ability to self-care. They can be abusive. Even just having young children around can mean that my self-care goes out the window as I focus my care on those precious others in my life. And lastly, I think this one is sometimes connected to all of the above, self-image. It's nice to be busy. It's nice to feel important in the workplace. And if that means I push through and I skip breakfast and I skip lunch and I don't shower today, I can sometimes wear that as a badge of honor. But also it can go on the other side, on the negative, as I've put there on the slide. If my mental health is impacted, perhaps, or my physical health, I can feel like I'm not good enough. I can feel like I don't deserve self-care. So I end up pushing through and pushing through without taking that time. So I'm guessing, as I said, the consensus from the chat is time is the biggest thing. Let's see what else people have got to say. Kareem says, I think it's important to do these things, but not put pressure on yourselves for not doing them. Yeah, I mean, part of self-care is self-compassion, I think, there, Kareem, and kindness. Yeah. I went through a few things recently and have been exhausted. So I haven't done barely any exercise for a while, but I need to be kind to myself. Yes, I'm not going to get myself exercising, moving, and being physically healthier if I don't feel like I deserve it, or if I'm feeling negative about myself. It's much better to go through to these things in a positive attitude. Daniel and Emma talking about time. Lauren bringing a really important concept in here, energy. Yeah, and sometimes that is just time, but where is my energy going if there isn't any left at the end of the day for myself? Victoria, I feel my responsibilities, work and family, are more important than me. So I'm really pleased you wrote that down. I think it's important to say these things out loud. So I don't need to see myself for self-care as either lesser or more important than others, or the work that I do, or my family and the people I support. I need to see us as having equal importance. It's that equality that's really necessary here. Claire says here, busyness. Daniel says work-life balance, prioritization of self-care over other tasks. It becomes really difficult, Daniel, really difficult. Philippa, commitments to others. Someone just saying privately to me here, no motivation. If you're looking for motivation for self-care, just like push some parts of your body with your fingers. What do you feel there? I feel a human being. I know what a human being needs. I know it needs water, good food, shelter, safety, love, connection to others, and social time, things like that. I also see something that's quite vulnerable. I am a squishy sack of meat. I don't have these superpowers that mean that I can stand more than others. And I think that should be our motivation above all, is that we deserve it. But that feeling like we deserve it is often down to our self-image, that last point there. Becky says here, when bad mental health lasts for a longer period, I find it harder to talk to others as I feel they might be fed up of hearing about it. Whether that's true or not, good spot. But yeah, we start to feel down on ourselves, less important. Julie's agreeing there with Corinne. Being too kind to ourselves is so important. Fiona says, for me, it's busyness and time. And yet when you push through the, oh, I don't have time, and do go for a nice walk or whatever restorative thing there is, it always makes you feel better. Yeah. And this is it. That sometimes there's a little hump between us and getting some self-care. Sometimes it's more of a hill. Sometimes it's a mountain. Sometimes it's a huge, huge step to take, even just to walk away from the laptop, take a little bit of a break. We need celebrating every time we do that. Rachel's agreed here, no motivation, yeah. Steph says other people's needs and stresses. Claire said we've all made time for this webinar. That's a good start. What a great point, Claire. You're all here. You found an hour's time to put in your diary for a webinar. What I would encourage you to do, yeah, thanks. That's a good little opportunity for a round of applause and a great reminder, Claire. What I would also add to that is, what else are you doing while you're listening to this webinar? Is your phone out? Are you answering emails, checking Teams messages, doing a little bit of research and work in the background? Can you take your hands off devices and just sit and listen? Take part if you feel comfortable, but just sit and listen. Or stand and listen. Walk around the room. There is nothing groundbreaking on my slides here that you need to see. Take the opportunity to step away from your desk. Take your laptop into another room. Go and sit and find, I mean, here in London, it's a beautiful, sunny, warm day. Take it outside, put some headphones on, whatever you fancy. It's a really good reminder. And thanks for reminding us of that, Claire. Corinne says lack of motivation as well. Not lack of time, but where I invest it. Yeah. We've got Vakili here from WC UK in Afghanistan. Lovely to have you here, Vakili. Tess says time, working full time and a parent. So once home, I'm focused on child and pets. Mental health is not in the best place either, not helped by the recent loss of parents. I'm really sorry to hear about that, Tess. And then even more, our self-care must become even more important there when we're dealing with such a significant life event of that. Karen says, I don't always notice that I'm letting things get me down and I'm not caring enough for myself. Too wrapped up in the other things I'm doing. And then sometimes those other things can be a good distraction. Feeling exhausted, sad. Alice says here, I think that not having a good example of an adult practicing self-care when I was growing up has meant these things do not come naturally to me. Yeah, that could be the case. But now I have my own children. I want to help them set healthy habits. Well, you know what the best way of helping them set healthy habits is? You've set it up there yourself, displaying that you can do it for yourself. Every little bit of self-care you give yourself benefits twofold on your children. Because not only are you better equipped to care for them and be there for them, but they can see you doing it. They can see the changes. Yeah, Philip said a good one here, financial problems. I didn't put that on this slide and I should have done. I can't afford to treat myself, especially if I'm an hourly paid worker. You know, sometimes self-care is the judgment between another hours of paid work or an hour to myself. Kath says, definitely agree, it's hard when you've not had it modeled. Karen says, true, finances can be an impact, but there are many self-care tools that you can use for free. It takes time. Angela says, I'm in the garden. Good. Leah says, I feel seen. Just sitting and being focused on one thing is the hardest thing to do. We have trained our brains, I think, for like multiple inputs. We have to get used to it. And look, it's okay. That's a wonderful thing to be able to do, but we must be in control of switching that on and off. Because if someone else can tell us that we need to switch on to 10 other things and we don't feel in control of that, the first thing I'm going to feel is fear, anxiety, worry. And yeah, my self-care is going to drop. Yeah, overactive mind. Yeah. But look, I was speaking about this on Monday with a colleague of mine, another therapist, and we were kind of thinking about how the world has changed and a lot of the technological impacts, sure, societies being more connected. I mean, look, the connections we have across the world are absolutely fabulous. We've got people in this conversation from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from I saw someone dialing in from Serbia. We've got people from all sorts of places across the world being able to come to this conversation, and that's fantastic. But we also need to think about what we need locally as well, what we need in a real basic, close to us animal context. And I don't know, I always used to think that I found those things much more easily during the summer holidays as a child, and maybe I am kind of lamenting a simpler time, but I used to really enjoy spacing out, just sitting somewhere and not doing anything, just kind of staring into space, seeing what was going on. Trying to find time for that can be difficult. I've put a few ideas up on the screen here. I wanted to show the wide range of things that we can consider self-care because it's so individual. I want you to have a look on this list. Have a little look. See if there's any here that you're doing already that you didn't chalk up to self-care. Or if there's any of here that feel really accessible to you, but you hadn't considered would be counted as self-care. Which of these could you do or start today? Those of you that commute to work and take public transport, you're probably walking for 30 minutes a day. Having 3 to 4 liters of water in a day. Oh, Karen's put sleep in capital letters there. Yeah. A healthy, balanced diet, rich in fiber. Decreasing our screen time. I think it really shows something, the fact that most of our devices with screens on them these days will have tools to limit our screen time. Even the thing that wants us to be using it more is telling us, hey, maybe this can be a bit of a problem doing too much of this. But we need to take control. We need to engage in that. I think giving over the control to an application actually puts us less in connection with our self-care. Karen says, just realized how important it is for my mental health. Yes, and water. Yeah. Ava says, walking. Yeah. Victoria, I really need to focus on healthy choices in what I eat and drink. That would just make so much difference. Wonderful. But look, Victoria, that's a really great point you've made there. Look how you can combine that with a few other things. If you can find an hour's time this weekend, and if you have children, this is a great activity to engage children with. Can you go for a walk around your local area? Find some small shops that have healthy, fresh choices for food. And then can you buy what you like the look of, like the smell of, like the feel of, really engage in the activity of buying that healthy food. And then either come back alone or bring it back with your children and try and come up with some recipes of your own. Creativity is such a beautiful self-care technique that we dismiss so easily. Steph says here, doing a puzzle is a nice one. Yeah, find it helpful to switch your focus and start thinking in a different way. Yeah, Corrine, volunteering is hugely important. Giving to others, we get something back from that. Fiona adds, walking and yoga since pandemic, free, and I've developed a love of both. Wonderful. That's also developing a love of yourself then, Fiona. If you're self-caring and you're enjoying it, it's wonderful. We deserve pats on the back for that all the time. Rachel said, it's so hard in this world and work environment to decrease screen time. I think it is. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It does take quite a concerted effort. One thing that I've found that really helps is actually not being in the same physical space as any screens. It might provoke anxiety in some of us to even consider this, but just try leaving your phone at home and go out for a walk for 10 minutes in your local area. See what you spot on a walk that you might have done hundreds, if not thousands of times. Think what different things you see. Think what different people you might engage with. I can't remember how to get to the bus stop. I'm so used to using my phone. I don't know what time the next bus is. I'm going to look on the timetable that's printed on the thing rather than on an app. I'm going to engage in a really different way. Yeah, but I agree, Rachel, it is really hard. Julie, 3 to 4 liters. I can barely manage one. Would get more exercise going to the loo, though, I suppose. Yeah, there's some fringe benefits. Saha says, I booked meditation and yoga class for this afternoon. Wonderful. Booking things, I think, is really important when it comes to making that time. Victoria says, this is a great suggestion. Thank you. Nicholas says, a gallon of water a day seems excessive and would flush a lot of vitamins and minerals out of the body. Yeah, I think a lot of these will be individual as well, depending on our diet, our body size, and what kind of exercise we're doing. Um, but just trying to get more water than we usually do, I think is always a good start for most of us. Says the guy doing a presentation about self-care, drinking a caffeinated drink at half midday. It's very easy to slip into these unhealthy habits. Karen says, yes, I've started to leave my phone in my room as soon as I get home from work. It's liberating. Yeah. Paul says celebrating successes and accepting praise. Yeah, there are more concepts to self-care than is just on this screen. I think success and praise is a really good one. Daniel says water sports, paddleboarding and canoeing give you physical exercise, time away from screens. Yeah, screens and water don't go well together. Connection to nature and time away from other people. Emma says, yes, Paul, celebrating success. Philip says, leave the phone downstairs when you go to bed. Great. Uh, Tayaba says sound sleep and mindful eating. Yeah, mindful eating is a really interesting concept. If you haven't come across it before, just type it into a search engine, have a little look around. I find mindful eating a really interesting concept. And it's kind of a little bit what I was talking about with that idea of going out, smelling the ingredients, holding them, going to local shops, thinking about how you're doing things in a slightly different way. Kaylee says, not a regular occurrence, but I booked in for a massage following a gift voucher. Good for mind and body. Yes, really good. Treating ourselves to these things. Um, I kind of guessed and knew that time and space would come up as a concept here when we were talking about self-care in the modern world. So I wanted to think about that. I want your answers in the chat as well as always. How or when do you find time for and schedule self-care? How do you get it in your day? Oh, Kaylee says here, agree with Julie, saying no is important. I'd miss that one, Julie. Yeah, learning to say no. Yeah, tough one. Really tough one. Especially if you're a naturally helpful and, you know, want to be engaged in helping kind of person. So, as I say at the start of this slide, having a good understanding of what self-care looks like for me is vital. I need to know what my self-care needs are, what tools and techniques work well for me, what I can fit into my busy day and my lifestyle. However, how do I find that time? When time is so precious, how do I find it? Well, I start small. I say that. There are, how many of us are there here now? Probably around 80? Yeah, 80 exactly. There's 80 people here that have managed to put an hour aside for this webinar. I know some of you will be doing other things at the same time, as I said, but you've put an hour in your diary to listen to this at least. So it can be difficult to put that chunk of time in there. If you've got a really busy lifestyle, really busy day at work, busy home life, busy social life, whatever it might be, it can be hard to say I'm going to take an hour for myself to do a yoga class or book a massage or go for a walk or something. 10 to 15 minutes can bring a huge amount of self-care. And if you keep that up for 30 days, it starts to create habit forming pathways in the brain. So we don't have to do it for very long, although 30 days sounds like quite a lot at the moment for me personally. But yeah, just a little bit every day helps us get into this habit. And if you can put it in your diary, even better. And to come back to what someone said there about kind of celebrating success and praise, we need reward. Don't punish ourselves. If you don't keep up a habit, if you've committed to something and you let it go, that's okay. Just instead of being punishing of yourself, my kind of guidance is, can you attempt to be interested in yourself instead? What is it that made me cancel that yoga class? My first thought is because my body was tired. But then yoga doesn't take up much of my bodily energy. I can do it as slowly or as vigorously as I choose. Was it because I wanted to see some friends rather than do something on my own? Was it because I didn't feel like I deserve it? Was it because I'm feeling a little depressed and a little down on myself at the moment? Being interested in why these things don't happen is much more productive than just punishing ourselves and saying, I'm bad. I've done something wrong here. And it's going to come because I've talked about it all throughout. Disconnect from technology wherever possible. My technology, these things, let's see how many messages. Oh, a few. They don't tell me how I'm doing. This does not give me any indication of what my needs are. It gives me a lot of indications about what other people want and what their needs are, but nothing about mine. So let's have a look. Rachel says, the first thing I do as soon as I finish work, if I hit the sofa and pick up my phone, then I'm done for. It has to be an immediate thing for me. What a beautiful realization you have about yourself there, Rachel. So you know precisely when to schedule something for your own self-care. And look, we talked about this on a previous webinar about this idea of a third space, particularly for those working at home, a third space between the work environment and the home environment. Even if it is just a 5-minute walk out to the local shop to get myself a treat or something like that at the end of the day, something that breaks that up. Because if the first thing I do is hit the sofa and pick up my phone, you're right, Rachel, it's easy for that to become the rest of the evening then. It has to be an immediate thing. Then Sarah says something slightly different. I have to exercise first thing in the morning or I won't do it. Get up and out the house for a run before I've realized what I'm doing. Great. Alice says, since working at home, I missed my commute as it was 30 minutes to walk, go on the train or drive through nice scenery, read a book, grab a coffee. So now I'm at home. I try to go out for a walk or a short run before starting work in place of the commute. Not always easy to be motivated, but I'm more productive at work if I do this. There's your motivation. You know what it does for you. Not only does it care for you bodily, perhaps also mentally a little as well, it also helps you be more motivated and productive at work. So you work less hours. You don't push your working day longer into the evening by taking time for yourself in the morning. It's actually like a little bit of a time trick there by the sounds of it. You're kind of creating time out of spending time on yourself. Fiona adds here, I do yoga for 15 in the morning, 15 minutes in the morning when I wake up. When I used to smoke a fag and have a coffee. Yeah. So not only are you doing yoga, you've done it in place of something that was negatively impacting your well-being and self-care. So it's double positive. I was also a nightmare in the morning. 15 minutes of bending and stretching has been revolutionary for me. I'm in such a better frame of mind to start the day. How wonderful. I think it really helps to do at least a little bit of self-care first thing in the morning. It's really hard to get it if I don't take it first thing in the morning. And also, I'm obviously kind of pouring straight into my work if I'm not self-caring first thing in the morning most days. And so if all I do is get up and get straight to work, what am I existing for? Who am I? What does my body need? I haven't even been to the bathroom yet. And again, I'm going to come back to these, but I think if the first thing I do in the morning is touch these buttons, I'm much less likely to self-care because I'm already engaged in what work needs, what my family and friends want from me. Maybe a little bit about what I want from them, but yeah, getting that kind of jump start to the day. So if you can take that first 5 or 10 minutes in the day without connecting to technology, I think can be really helpful for our self-care. Um, I wanted to talk about kind of this idea of feeling overwhelmed. A few of you mentioned it in the chat, and it comes up really often for me when I talk to people about self-care, is not knowing where to start. Got too much stuff going on at home, too much stuff going on in the workplace. I'm stretched too thin. I hear that phrase really, really loud and clear. But look, just talk. Just start talking. Some of you are doing it here. You're adding some real insight into this chat box here, into your own self-care needs. You're giving options and ideas for other people that they might not have had them, so you're helping others. But real conversation about me, my life, what I want, the emotions that get in the way of my day and cause difficulties. It makes it far easier to notice when things are changing. And then it's easier to prioritize ourselves. If I'm talking and hearing about and listening to my needs, then yeah, sometimes I do need to come first, even if it is just, a good bath in the morning, a 5-minute walk before I start work, or just an hour to myself on the weekend or in an evening, if that's what I need. Get creative. I said this earlier. Anything that we do that's creative, I think has really good self-care benefits because I'm engaging myself, I'm interested, and I tend to switch off from worries and concerns about other people if I'm being creative. And yeah, annoyingly, exercise and rest help us with feeling overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is often, there's an energetic side to it. And if I'm exercising, I can actually generate more power, more energy. One of your cohort said it earlier about feeling more focused, productive at work by exercising in the morning. And then, yeah, rest. Rest is so important for our resilience. It's the best way of making sure that we get up the next day ready to go again. Alice has put here in the chat, as a football mum, I used to spend hours waiting around for kids at matches or training. Now I grab myself 30 minutes to walk or run during the warm up before their matches or during training. It's a good way of squeezing in some me time in a hectic day. Plus, it's been fun to explore new places when they have away matches. There's so many aspects to the self care of that, Alice. That's wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. Yes, often we lead a life where we have to give a lot of time to others, particularly children and partners and family members and stuff like that. But if we're cute about it, if we're smart about it, yeah, my kids don't need to watch me, don't need me to watch them warming up. And yeah, I could just sit around and watch them, or sit and play on my phone, or have a conversation with someone, or I can go and do something that's really for me. I'm going to just give you a little bit of a kind of task here. And this is not to do right now. For some of you, it will be to do it later. If you need a reminder, bring out your phone. This is where technology can be useful. Snap a picture of this slide with your phone, particularly the bit on the right-hand side here. If you can just take 5 minutes just to stop and reflect on the things you've done today, or this week, or this month, whatever works well for you, whatever time frame. I like looking on a daily basis. I have a very short-term focus sometimes. So what have I done today? What habit have I done today that I really should be stopping? What's one that I really should be starting that I'm not doing at all? And what's one that I have been doing that I really need to make sure I continue? What's one that really feeds me and really makes that self-care possible? Kaylee's added here in the chat, gardening or looking after potted plants is good for outside time, nature connection, and feeling productive. Fantastic. Thank you, Kaylee. So, some of you might have heard that and thought, yeah, do you know what? I do gardening every week. I don't count it as self-care, but I really need to make sure that continues. Or I have a garden that is uh, languishing and not doing so well at the moment. Maybe I can start that habit. Maybe just 3 times a week, I get outside into the garden for 15 minutes and see what I can do. It doesn't have to become any kind of grand designs project. It can just be gentle and slow and learning stuff really good for our brain. I also wanted to talk about this idea of kindness and compassion. It's come up in a couple of different aspects throughout this session. And thank you for those of you engaging in the chat and for those of you just sitting back and listening. We talked about kindness and compassion for others, this idea about how we can get joy, how we can boost our serotonin and endorphins by being kind and helping others, friends, family, people in the community, whatever it might be. Helps us feel satisfied. It reduces anxiety. Many people that come to these webinars, I think, are already a little engaged with the topic, and that's why you're here. And maybe you're the type of person that kind of supports a lot of other people. But what about kindness to yourself? I think kindness to ourselves starts with honesty. What are you finding difficult right now? What do you need? And we're going to do my favorite technique for recognizing our needs in a minute. Those of you who have been to these webinars before will recognize it. Treat yourself with kindness. By meeting your needs, you are being kind to yourself. It's an antidote to fear. And it puts us back in charge and in control. If I am recognizing things that are going on for me and I'm doing something to treat those things and look after myself, my anxious brain goes, oh, hello, Harry gets this. Harry understands what he needs. And it gives me permission to enjoy things there. And my last and I think most important point for the whole of today, the whole of this idea and topic of self-care, is we need options. Sometimes I'll run out of motivation. Sometimes I'll run out of interest in a thing that has been giving me self-care. What happens then is my horizon of choice narrows. I feel trapped. I feel like I don't have the tools I need. So we need to find options, and hopefully some of you have found them here today. And what that does is it expands the different choices we have. We can look around a little bit more. We can be more selective and more engaged in our own well-being. Akili from WCUK in Afghanistan. Um, in my opinion, these are the most important points to maintain the health of the body. Avoid risky behaviors, drink lots of water, eat proper food, a healthy diet, take strengthening the immune system seriously, more sunlight, exercise. Don't let TV and internet reduce your sleep. What a great way of putting it. Yeah, don't let these other things get in the way of the thing that we know we really need. Thank you for sharing that, Luckily. That's really good. Daniel says walking the dog. Escape from the house is even more important with hybrid working or working at home more often. I often have a walk before starting work to have separation. Yeah, that third space. Julie says here in the chat, I was reading this morning about glimmers rather than triggers, just taking notice of the small things that make you smile or bring a little joy. Seeing the number of bees and hoverflies on poppies in the garden. What a beautiful sentence. That's given me a bit of a glimmer. Yeah, a little thing that brings me a smile or some joy. Thank you, Julie. It's a really nice recommendation. I'll keep that one. So, yeah, Alice has said there in the chat, I love that, Julie. Uh, Annie says here in the chat, I take my son to a kids' gardening club, which he loves because he can dig around in mud and get really nice and dirty, but it also helps me to go outside and meet new people. I enjoy the slower pace of potting around away from our busy life. A big plus is learning more about different plants and all around gardening. Brilliant. There's so many, as you can see as you're writing that, aspects of self-care in there. Okay, so for those of you that have done this before, you'll recognize it as my favorite technique at the moment. I try and do this 5 minutes every day. I try and do it first thing in the morning before I've touched my phones, before I've opened my laptop or spoken to anyone or done anything important. I check in with what's important for me. So the way I introduce it is this. I can improve my self-care by taking time to identify and meet my needs regularly. And I know that this is so easy to forget with the relentless pace of work. But all we need is a quiet spot for 5 minutes without technology. We just need to take a deep breath and think about what our needs are. I'm going to show you me doing it. I would invite any of you that feel comfortable. A couple of you said you were outside. What a great place to be doing this. To just play along with me. I add a few other aspects in, just, change things up and keep it fresh for myself. But one of my favorite ways of starting off is to just close my eyes. If you've ever done any kind of mindfulness technique, you'll know the way to sit. Just shuffle yourself around a little bit, get yourself comfortable. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground if you can be, or even better, be laying down on the ground if you've got the space. I then want you to take your hands. And by the way, when I say close your eyes, don't try and squeeze them tightly shut. Just try and rest them nice and gently. And as you move your body around slightly, oh, my neck is really sore. I hadn't recognized that today. I want you to take your hands and put them on your body wherever needs attention. Obviously, mine are going to my neck right now. I didn't notice that until I did that little bit of movement. I've been holding myself really upright today, trying to look professional and important, I suppose. With your hands on that part of your body, and just try and relax the rest of it. I then want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And just notice if that shifts or changes anything. It allowed me to sit back in my chair a little bit. We'll do one more. A nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. I then want you to ask yourself that all-important question. What do I need today? Or even better, what do I need now? What do I need? If you're sitting somewhere comfortable and alone, ask it out loud. Let your ears hear it in your voice. What do I need? That's it. And in just a couple of minutes, we give ourselves some attention. We start thinking about what we need. Let's come back round again and open your eyes again slowly. It's really bright here in my room. Let me know in the chat, what do you need? What did you think of when I asked that question? I've noticed a change in myself immediately. Instead of going for my Diet Coke again, I picked up my water bottle. One of my needs, I was thinking, is I need something a bit healthier today. I need to think of my body a bit more often. If I'm reaching basically 1 p.m. as it is here in London, and I'm only just realizing that there's something going on with my neck, and it feels really sore now I'm paying attention to it. It's probably screaming out saying, yeah, there you go. That's what it is. That's what's going on. If I'm getting to this time of day and I'm only just recognizing that, maybe I need to pay a bit more attention to my body. Becky says, to reduce my anxiety. Well, hopefully, if you can bring this into being a habit, Becky, this can help to reduce our anxiety. Some of our anxiety is based on a very animal level, a very animal realm of, am I looked after? Do I have access to water? Do I have good food? Am I safe? All of those kind of things. By slowing down, switching off from all of this electrical impulse and all of this information and tuning into the information here can really help me with that anxiety. It works really well for mine. I wake up some mornings incredibly anxious, full of all of the things that I feel like I'm going to need to do and get to in a day. And as soon as I start doing things, that anxiety starts to go away. But it's much better if I'm doing those things for myself rather than just pouring myself straight into work. Tess needs rest. Julie needs water. Good. Fiona, spend a full hour in the sunshine at lunchtime. Beautiful. Corrine, I need to use less screens. Philip, I need to stop work at my proper time rather than thinking I have to stay on. What a great sentence. Try and get this on a daily basis. Whether you do it first thing in the morning, lunchtime, some other break during the day, or at the end of work, maybe just before bedtime works for you. Try it at different stages in the day and see what difference there is for you. Thank you for playing along with that. I really appreciate it. I also wanted to remind you that you don't have to go self-care alone. Although it's personal, although it's individual to each of us, there are supports out there. Speak to key individuals around you, your managers, human resources, benefits departments, occupational health. Find out what's available to you at work to support your mental health, your physical health, your diet, exercise, all of this kind of stuff. Maybe share how you're feeling with a trusted peer, a friend, or a family. As I said earlier, those that know us best can suggest some ideas that might work for us. Does your EAP provide support for your self-care? We do at CiC. We have a huge resource library on Well Online. All of our help sheets are on there about some really practical and mental and emotional topics where you can find more information. Remember that education pillar, that first and often most important one. I need to be informed about what's available to me, what options I have. And then, just as a little reminder, it's beautiful to be widely connected online, but what can I access in my local area? What can I find out around me that really supports my self-care? Because I think if it's close to hand, if it's local and community based, I'm going to have a different connection to it. You know, Annie said there in chat about the kids gardening club. I'm guessing that's somewhere quite local. So as we wrap up, I just want to remind you of some of the things on offer from CiC. As I said, Well Online, which I'll put the web link to in the chat. Now, some of you will already know what your access to that is and your password and your username. But if you're not sure what your username and password is, it will be, if you are a CiC customer, unique to your organization. So reach out to your HR department or get in touch with us. Just give us a call and we'll be able to tell you. And if you are looking for more, go to cicwellbeing.com. That's our corporate website. At the bottom of that page, you'll find a link to sign up for our newsletter. You'll get our monthly help sheet, news, tools and tips, and a reminder and invitation to each of these monthly webinars. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for any of the sessions that you might have missed in the past or might miss in the future. Maybe you put aside an hour for the August webinar and you don't turn up. You go and do something for yourself for an hour instead. Maybe that's the self-care you need. And if you are completely new to CiC, if you've never heard of us before, come and speak to us on our website, ask us any questions you have, anything you think you need, we'd be happy to help with. Um, so the last thing remains for me to say thank you to those of you watching on the recording, and a massive thank you for those of you who've been watching live, especially if you've been able to take part and give some of your suggestions and help others here. But if you've just been sitting back and listening, that's one of the most wonderful things that you can do for your self-care. I'm going to stop the recording now, so bye-bye to those of you watching on there.